This is Baruch here at the Tigun Elevator Kollel, and this is the final shir for the year 5785, getting ready for Pesach. And so what we're going to do over here today is we're going to go over to the Matza. So we talked about two different aspects of looking at the drinking the wine, come to the side of Bina, and now we're coming over to the eating of the Matza. The Matza is the side of Abba, that is from Chochma. So we're going to see how that works. We're going to get, where am I at here? And so we're going to see what we can do. So we're going to go to page Tov Pei Resh in this Sefer. We'll just see a little bit about the introduction here, and we'll read a little bit. Now, we're eating the matzah. Ain't sark l'kavod begadlus rishon ela rak sark l'kavod bekatas rishon debetzad Abba. So instead, we have to concentrate on the katas rishon, but this from the side of Abba. V'chein begadlus sheni debetzad Abba. Also in the gadlus sheni, we're going to concentrate on that too. Katas rishon, gadlus sheni. The fiach seidish in his bar the haida betechila the kavod bekadisas gadlus sheni. So the first we want to think about gadlus sheni before we deal with Katnas Rishon. Rav the Besof the Kabba B'Kadis of Katnas Rishon. Ba'am the B'Katnas Sheni. So now when we talk about Katnas Sheni, what about Katnas Sheni? The Mitzad Abba Gam Ku Niknas Atach B'Rachidas Matzah. That's also coming in. Remember, you're getting all of these mochin coming in while you're eating matzah. So the time to really eat it is before the Knesses Gadlus Sheni. But I didn't really hear from the Riza what the names of the Racha. I didn't get the idea of what are the names for that contents. Katnas Sheni. Zulasi Kavanas Hashem Mishal Katas Rishon, that we got, and also we had the names of godless Shem. V'kevan she'ev shecha she'ein mochim ela d'shad Abba nikroim b'shem s'akadatam. We're not going to use that name. Kamo elu shemitzad ima, because we used that when we dealt with ima. I guess that's the idea. Al kain sark l'kavod b'katas sheni d'Abba b'stam. So we just generally have this concentration that we're going to be bringing in Katnas Sheni, but we don't have a name for it. Beli Kavana Shemos HaMochim, and no Kavana for the names of the Mochim. Now we're moving on. These are your Kavana. The Kavod b'Shem b'milui. So you take the name of Aya, and you look at it. This is the way you're thinking now. Take the name of Vaya in the Milui form. The Shem Knesses Hamochen the Gadlus Sheni. Then this is in talking about now the bringing in of the Gadlus, the Mochin, the Gadlus Sheni. Ki Matza he, because Matza is Misbar Me'ev Shloshim v'Chamesh, is the Matza is a Gematria of 135. It's a Gematria of Avaya. It's the same thing as a Gematria of Avaya the Av, which is 72. Yud, and he shows it to us here. Avaya the Sag is there, which is in the form of, which is like this, as an Aleph in the middle of the Vav, different from previously. So he said, V'hem Shnei Mochim Chochma Bina. The Mitzad Abba, the Gadlus Sheni. So this is the Mochin of Gadlus Sheni, the Abba. One is going to be an Av, the other one can be the form of a Sag. For all of this comes in at the time that you're eating the matzah. So the matzahs, a kodem kandisas akatas arishon the tam and this the ale. So this is the first thing. We're bringing in Katnas Sheni. Right, so get it wrong. We're bringing in Gadlus Sheni before we're bringing in the Katnas Rishon. Because when we're not worried about what can happen to them as a result of them coming in first, because they're powerful mochin. The Gadlus Sheni the Abba. Matzos ha'elyona is really a reference to the two matzahs. One is the upper matzah, shehich avaya the av, but misoy is shehich avaya the sag. But of the matzah tachtoina, so that the lower matzah, which is the Muach Hadas, which is going to come between the two of them. He said of the Zer Anpin, the Mitzad Abba the Gadol Sheni, Hakol, which has within it Chasadim Shehem Havayah Demad Alafim. So you have to think of that. What we're talking about is this energy is all contained. According to Rebbe Shimon and according to the Rav, he says all of it is contained in letters. Let me see what I'm doing here. This last word. Megavuros, the ben, the hain, different set of letters. Nimros, Shabbatevis Matza, Lon Nirmas Muachadas. So the fact that Das is not mentioned in this group, you only have Abba V'Ima. Because Makom Kevin Nirmas Vishnechem Mochem Yishanim Are Gam Shlishi B'Klal, since you have those two, Abba and Ima flow into Das. V'harech Nirmas B'Tevis Matza Klalos Kol Mochim Shal Gad Sheni Shemitzad Abba. So he says, Achar Kach, so after this, the Kavin, B'Katnas Arishon. We should have Kavana on Katnas Arishon. So first of all, he says the first Kavana, you're standing before the Matzahs. Now there's more than one Kavana here, I think, is what he's saying. He says it because you have two things that we're really concerned about. One is the Godless Sheni. Godless Rishon, I think, comes in with the day. So Godless Sheni, that should come before Katnas Rishon. This is the idea. Hamatzach Elyon is an Elokem. Let's think about it now. We're talking about Katnas now. They're going to be Elokems. It's going to be Elokem, the Yudin, the Chochma, the Katnas Rishon, the Abba. So that's the Chochma side of the Katnas Rishon, the Abba. The Mesois is going to be an Elokem, the Hayin, which represents Bina. The Matzah Tachtoina is going to be the Alofim, which represents the Das of the Mochin, the Katnas, Rishon. The Godless, because, but now here, excuse me, I'm supposed to be down below, not up above. So, but how do we see this in the matzahs themselves? The Godless, because in the Indian of Godless Sheni, Shemitzad Abba, so we already have over there Be'inyan Cheshbon Osius Matza comes out to the Gematria of Abba and Sag and this Be'inyan Katnas. Now moving over the Katnas and Rishon Shemitzad Ada Amatz Rich and the Kav, and this is what we have to have in mind. Kol Bechidas Amatzos. So he says Etzel Amatzos. Etzel mitzvahs yachatz. We're going to split the matzahs. So therefore, how did these elokems, because we're dealing with Katnas Rishon, going to be referenced? So what we're really thinking about is a kavanah here. Shall remizes Hashemas ha'ela b'matzos he muchalecha b'shlosha matzos k'vi b'chidush shlosha ofanim. Sira Osius. So let's talk about what the letters look like. Shall Hashemas the Katnas Rishon, when we talk about these names, wrote Salom kihine metzino b'kavanas amein. So we saw this over in the kavanas amein, that the main idea over there, not the main idea, but something in the phrase Yehei Shmei Rabbah. It has the word letters Yud, K, and Aleph. In that way, he's talking about the three lines, because the Yud represents the right line, the Hey represents the left line, and the Aleph represents Das, which is in the middle. So he said, Yehei Shmei Rabbah Sheshemas Malayim, that these, if you obeyim, Rak Be'osius Yehei. So the Milui is going to be used, that is the Milui we're talking about, to figure out what's going on with this Elokem, is going to be in the milui of the word Yehei, or that is in the concept of a Yud, a K, and a Vav, and an Aleph. So they have a whole bunch of different names, right? They're all Shavim, but they're always the same name, Elokem, Elokem, Elokem. But the only thing that changes about them is one letter. So we don't need to have a Kavanah to be Mekavin. As the rem is the kol Hashem, is the rem is for all of these names. But only the most important part of the name Elokim has to be the Hey, because it's the Hey that has three different ways it could be spelled. So these three Elokims that we mentioned, Shalamoch and the Katas Rishon, the Abba ve'Ima, Kulam Shavim, they're all together. Ba'os Yosehim. Ve'ein b'neihem, and they're not between them, a shinoi, ella, one letter, b'miloi os hey bilvad. Mitam ha'os hey he nisak the Rishona, because the hey is going to be this place where the tikkun is going to take place for the toisvach the osius elam and be added on to the other three letters over there. Shehi shechoya be'ivor. So let's talk about. Let me see if I can understand this a little better. The only place that we're concerned about now is one place in the letter Hey. And that's because we're in a state like in Ivor, where we'll see, Ki os Hey zeh shal Elokim b'hiyos b'moach Chochma. So the Elokim that is dealing with Kanas Rishon, over levush shalo, or we're dealing with the levush, he b'milu yud k'zeh hey yud. So if you're dealing with the hey that's dealing with Chochma, the Chochma part of Chochma, then you're going to have a hey yud. V'hiyos b'muach b'bina, over levush shalo b'milu hey hey k'zeh, v'hiyos b'muach hadas. So if it's in the muach hadas, or b'levush shalo, or in its levush, miluyach b'alav k'zeh is going to be hey aleph. Vim came after Lana Lermoz rock as Osius Yehe. So therefore it's important to have a reference to and to concentrate on these three letters, because that's the most important parts when we're dealing with the Moach of Kadas Rishon. Vim came after Lermoz rock as Osius Yehe. Now you're splitting the matzahs. After the Ramos rock shinwit source hey shalakim, we should really have a reference only to the change in the source of the hey shalakim v'lechein anim b'kavanim ata. So therefore, the kavana now is this: b'bitzias hamatzah hashniya, when we are going to break the second matzah. There's going to be a change in these three names. Shall Shem Elokim b'shlosha minitziurim sheyesh ba'os hey. Elishahu b'tzir os hey abeshutach k'loholomon. But it's going to be, he's going to explain that it's just in the form of the hey itself, without it in the milui form. So we said the milui is yehei, is either yud or hey or aleph. But there's a way to look at this, the change in this one letter, in a different way. So what is that? So they're moching the katas rishon, shehem levushim, which really is talking about the levush. We said before that maybe we don't know the names of the moch that's inside of it because it's very small. It's katnas. And also the fact that for Mochan ba'Abba, Ve'ena levushim shebetzad Abba nikra Elokim, and they're not called Elokim, they're be'etzem, ki'im al shem levushim shebetzad Ima, so they're like the levushim that come from the side of Ima, that's we saw over there. V'chein ein anim b'kavana b'chem as ofen the remiza b'matzah, so we're not really going to have the kavana here of that same idea that we had in matzah, that is b'shinui hamiluyim, which it would be the shinui the miluyim. Now understand where he's going here. He said before we said that the milui could be yod, k, or aleph, but now we don't have that. So what were we going to do? So he says hamiluyim shebechem rak b'shinui tzira osahei, but there could be a change in the letter hey, pashut. How does that work? Pashut atzbachu sheb'shem elokim. So here's he's saying, like these three matzahs, and we're dealing with katnas rishon, how in fact do we distinguish in our kavanah between which is the first, second, or the third matzah? B'bechinas yura yukar hachefer sheyesh beim elokim dechochma elokim debina. So he says that we're not going to see actually. We have to distinguish between these three matzahs. All look him to das. There's a time at the very beginning of this Katnas Rishon, she'elu halokim shehem amochin is their anpen, enim amaloyim. They're not in a milui state. It's not going to be K Yud K Hey K Aleph. It's not going to be like that. Adayim. They're still in a much more preliminary state. Elochem shemus elokim peshut, and there's simple hey. That's all it is. V'oz yi efshel lahaker ezechu b'chochva ezev b'bina v'ezev b'das. Ela heker ozhu, but the heker is going to be like this. Ozhu rak al yedei shinei tziurim ha'elu k'moshen shenizker, only in the form of the letters as we mentioned. V'lechem gam ata. So therefore also now, na'asach ha-rebbe b'tzir oz hey ha-peshuta v'zechu in yonim. So this is how the letter hey all by itself is going to change, and we're going to see how this works. So here's your kavana, and you're thinking you have the three matzahs. You had already the concept of the mochin coming in of God the Sheni. Now we're talking about Katnas Rishon, and exactly how do we picture this? So he says, and what's going to become in Katnas is the name Elokim, is refers to the din. So that's what's happening here. So he oz hey the Elokim the Chochma. Tziyur of Tzurasa is the normal way, or that's one way of looking at it, is a daled with a yud. Ayedei shechab hatalui, that is that little line that's going down, is really in the form of a yud. It's like a, maybe it could be also very small vav, but it's a yud. The bina is going to be the daled, but it's going to have it's going to be longer, it's going to be a vav, it's going to be du. This could still fit in and make the letter hey. Ayedei shechakava taluyi bo, who b'tzir vav, because the line now is going to be in a vav. V'hel the das shehesh shalosh vavim, but das is actually a bit of picture to hey. Imagine a hey. Break up the daled into two vavs, one going vertical, one going horizontal. That gives you two, and then you have the next line, which is going to be on the left, is going to be the third one. So he says al yedei shechakava taluyi bo hu b'tzir vav. V'gam tzuras yud, so then also the tzuras of this daled shabo he b'tzir shtei vavim. It's the daled. That's what I said. Is going to be made into two vavs. By bir hiki hinei tzuras oz hey, the form of the lay is really like this. Morkeves b'shtei oz is daled al vav. So it's daled al vav. But the vav hataluya, but so halal tzuras of the daled. He katana ve'ein bo rosh. It's small. It has that little, doesn't have that little curve at the top. It doesn't have a head. The Ramaz al zer anpen kashahu be'iver. This is the teacher about zer anpen in a very small state of consciousness, that which is called iver. But inside of bina, it's in an iver stage, and that's what it looks like. It looks like a daled with a yud. So he said, "B'soch abina ein bo adayim b'chinas mochin diyanika hanikroim rosh." So it still doesn't have a head. So he's talking about, I think he's talking about the vav that's inside the daled, that joins the daled, or I don't know, it's up at the side of the daled. It's not going to have, it's just going to be a line. It's not going to have like a hook at the top for the rosh, for the chen, for the pamim, the side of the zuch oz vav taluya b'tzuras yud vav yud, which is in the form of a yud. So sometimes we'll see it just like a yud, for hu b'yosa oz hey, b'tzad moach ha-chochma, he yud shal chavaya. That yud is going to represent the chochma side. It's going to be of the chochma of Abba. V'chatam hu ki hinei zu ha-vav shebetoch ha-hey, he b'pechin is their anpen when he's really, really small. Well, he's still just, let's say, this tipa, which is the idea, or the mind, a little piece of the mind of the Ein Sof. So this is before that he puts the tipas and the mochin dezer anpen, it goes into ima. The shem iver azai tzuras zu havav is the tzuras of a yud. So that's where it's like at the beginning. Lefi shu romas lizman shachoya zer anpen bebechinas tipas moach hachochma. So this is to tell you that when zer anpen is originally just a drop from the tremendous consciousness of the Abba side, but just a drop. Tibas Mocha Chochma Shehi Yud Shalavaya, which is that Yud. V'yosef b'bina azna vav, but then it grows and it becomes like a vav. He says, Ki hu mora al zamana ivra, this is to tell you about the time of gestation. Shuhu b'sochu shal bina, while it's inside of the mother's womb, so to speak, which is in bina. Sha'az hu vav b'sod shesh kitzvahs, then it becomes the vav. The vav represents the number 6, which represents the 6 corners of Zer Anpin. Tlas, klilim, betlas, but folded up, 3 on top of 3. Amnan hu tzuras vav b'li rosh, so there it's in the form of a vav. It has no head. He said b'li rosh, ki ein bo mochin, because the mochin of godless is just, there are no mochin. The v'yosba b'das, but when it reaches the das, kolomer ach shenolav v'na'asa ba'atzba b'chinas das. So now it's born out. This tipa, which went into Ima and developed into a Zer Anpin, the Zer Anpin is now born out independent. Das aklalos atzilos. Oz hu horos is pashta is pashta. So this is a teacher about his spread. The ispashtas are mochin sadi the tzelin the Zer Anpin, levoshim belevoshim, which is clothed in the clothes that is clothed in. The imba besocha klalim shall the Zer Anpin continue to be part of the klalim of Zer Anpin and nikrodas. The klalos atzilus of all atzilus. Let me read this again. Oz hu horos is pashtos, the biyosef bedas, when it reaches das, go to the top. He says, kolomer ach shenoled v'na'asa ba'atba b'chinas das. So now it's born. And now the moach is going to spread. It's spread through das. The klalos atzilus. Oz hu horos is pashtos amochin tzadi the tzalim. So this is really showing us about the spread of the tzadi, the tzalim. So those of us who knows what the tzalim means, tzadi the tzalim is there, the zer hameluvashim belevushim, which are clothed in the levushim, the ima besoch hakelim shel zer anpin. In other words, the nai of ima once again enters into the head of zer anpin. The hanikra das, and that process that was actually entering or going in, which leads the power, I guess, is das. It's coming through the yesod of ima, or in this case of Abba. The klalos atzilus, v'sod mochim shabovin is pashta mispashta b'shlosha kavim shazol, that it's going to spread into those 3 lines. Chachan biyamin boga b'smol v'datecha b'memsa ayedecha b'netza chod yesod shalo, so they're going to come through that. The chain, he says, so the suras, the hey zu is in the form of vavs, like this, gazeb, vav, vav, vav. So here's the dalet, and there's the line on the left side. So that's actually 3 vavs. Now you see this in the Rishash a lot, different kinds of formations of how the vav can be written. Over here now he says that when you do the vav like this, you're talking about the spread of the mochin down through Zer Anpin. So let's see how it goes. Shuhu horosh shlosha kavim, which is to show you that there are in fact going to be 3 lines in Zer Anpin, shalabina b'Zer Anpin, that is the nai, the netzachod yisod, the bina, which represents right line, left line, middle line. Kenisker, as we mentioned above, v'hiviyesh od tam nosef d'tzir zeh shlisha, but there's another reason for this form. See, he says why. Ki hadas hu kavem soy shetzaraso Suras Vav, that the Das is actually the middle line, which is a line. The line is in the form of a Vav. Shalavaya. L'chein kol kaveh ha'oz hey. So therefore, when we're talking about the spread of Das, we're talking about all the lines of the letter hey being in the form of Vavs. Asher b'bachat na'asim b'tziur Vavim. Like that. Let's see how much more we got to do. Okay, we do have a little bit more, so let's see what it says. Let me explain. Shall os he mitztayrim b'tzuras shlosha matzos. Now remember, as we said before, it's not easy to remember this, is that in Olam Atzilus you're dealing with the formation of letters. The letters are actually what holds the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. And they become manifest in our world in physical forms. And here we're talking about the mochin that come from the side of Abba V'Tzilus, which is an Av or a Sod, when we're dealing with Bina, and then Das, we're incorporated with it, we said like that. Now we're still dealing with mochin dekadnus, and we're dealing with only one letter. We're saying that one letter in the mochin dekadnus, that we have to understand it could have three forms. It could be Daled Yud, Daled Vav, or Vav, Vav, Vav. So here we are. Now let's Shlosha Matzos. Ayideh mitzvahs yachad, so we're going to break the matzahs. Shuku Hasimon, the Revi, Meseder Hasimonim, which is the fourth sign that we have in the Pesach night. He nezbar be'inyan mochin, the godless of Sheni. So we're explaining like this in the mochin of the second godless. Shemitzad Abba haniknasim b'zer anpin b'matzahs b'mitzvahs achidas matzah. So all of this, when you're eating the matzah, this godless Sheni is coming in. With everything else, you can have all the rest. Ki matzah b'rishayda chi chavaya the av muach chochma. V'ashniya is a chavaya the sag, which is muach bina. So for this reason, the first matzah, because it represents, what did he say? I'll read again. He says, let's see, matzah rishona is avaya da'av, mu chochma. The second one is avaya da'sag, which was avina. For this reason, he said, zu hamatzah rishona, which is the av matzah, and in nechaleches, it doesn't get divided up, the nifresis, and given out or separated. The shtei perusos into two different forms. Base mitzvahs yachad at the time when you're breaking the matzah. Kihi keneged the muach hachopach hanikra os yud, and it's called about to that. What do we get out of that? Shel shem avaya. Vihi os achas shlema. It's one complete letter. So therefore, this matzah, which represents this letter yud, is going to be like that. B'tzir nekuda, it's really the form of a dot. That's what they always say, that the yud is like a dot. She'eni yechol his chalek, and you can't divide it up. Masha ein kain the os hey, which is not the case. What we said, like the os hey, we can split it up. Shemor keves b'shnei osius daled and vav. It's actually a grafting of two letters, daled vav, daled yud, or vav vav vav. That's the first matzah. We don't divide it up. Aval matzah hashniya shehi keneged moach habida shehi os hey shal hachvaya. Kevin shemor keves b'shtei osius l'chein osius. So it's not just the yud. It's actually joined together, the yud and the daled. Now you have a hey like that. Nachlechus nefreses the shtei perusa. Since it was formed out of two different parts, it sounds like that. But mitzvahs yachad, at the time he split. So he said, Hetziach akad misharom is the os daled. So let's just hear that again. He says the small part, which is a remiss to the letter daled. La'achidas matzah v'chetzia, like you're eating a matzah and a half. Hagadol sharom is the os vav. No, excuse me. He divided the matzah into two. Hagadol sharom is the os of vav, the matzniim l'afikomen. So the bigger part, which is a remiss to the letter vav, he says, which is the vav vav vav, maybe from before l'afikomen. That's going to be safe for the afichodesh shechababina nikras os hey rishona shel shem avaya v'hi nachleches. And it can be divided up. The tzir shtei osius daled al vav. So he says a nifresis, so therefore that's the matzah that could be split. Let me see where I'm at. So he said it could be split. So nifresis, matzah zu the shtei perusa. So therefore that's the matzah that could be split. Let me turn this around a little bit. He said b'shem sod zer anpen v'nukve v'hiyosef b'socha bina, while they're still inside a bina. So the iver ki habina the atzilus shehi ima nikras hey rishona shel havaya is the hey. We know that of the havaya b'klal usachu v'nukve the zer anpen, the female aspect there. Their method b'tzir os daled shel hey mitam daled v'loshen dalus, poor. Kihi dalav aniyah. Now let me read this again, because I think I went over where my original share was, and I'm just getting back to it. So that second matzah is the one that can be broken up, because it represents bina. The shtei perusa, so it can be made into two. Now he says like this: Shahu sod zer anpen, which is the secret, shem sod of the zer anpen, which is what? The nukve, that is broken into two parts. One part is going to be the male child, and the other part is going to be his female attribute. Bihiyosa Besocha Bina, where there's still one side of Bina. Besod Ha'iver, but they're still gestating. Kecha Bebina the Chatzila Shehi Ima. Nikris He Rishona Shel Levaya is called now the first He of Levaya. Beklal V'Sachel. Of V'Nuk V'Echel the Zer Anpen, V'Nuk Ve the Zer Anpen, and the Nuk a Zer Anpen. Ner Mezes B'Tzir Oz Dal Shel He. So it's really referenced by the Oz Dalet of this letter He. Betam Shachad Dalet B'Loshen Dalos is always first the female aspect, because the Dal, the real poor one, the one that is poor, is the woman. He Dala V'Aniya, she is impoverished. V'Zer Anpen Nirmaz Ba'oz Vov Shel HaHe Betam Anisker Shu Ben Shesh Spheros, because therefore it will be a Vav, and next goes with the 6. If you use Zer Anpen Besocha, so with Zer Anpen is inside of the Nukba, so that, inside of Bina. So the Eva Shenechem Mischavren V'Naasa Oz do like this into a Hey, which is the inside of Bina that could be looking like this. Kamo Oz Hey Achaz, just like a single has a B'Chei V'D'Chei. Hamatzach HaShniya Shehi Keneged Bina. Nechalech L'Shtayim B'Chetzach HaRishon Shetzurah Vav, so the first part, which has the form of a Vav, Shuhu HaChelek HaGadol Shekeneged Zer Anpen, which is the real big part, which corresponds to Zer Anpen. Menichan Umatzniim, we leave it, we hide it away, the Afikoman later on. But the second half, which is a form of a Dalet, Shuhu HaChelek HaKatan, which is the smaller part, Shehi Keneged Nukva, which corresponds to the Malchus or the Nukva Zer Anpen. So we join it together. Beis HaBracha, when we make the bracha, Im HaMatzah HaRemebetz Al Moach, to the matzah that really refers to the Moach HaChochma, Shehi Matzah Rishona Shlishis, which is joined together with that. Shehi Yud Al Yedecha V'Zecha Na'asit Bechinas Di K'Lechalon, it becomes the letters Dalet and Yud, as we said before, as we're going to explain. We're going to go into it more, but we're actually going to finish, and this is going to be the final shir here for this year 5785. Vorchim Aleichem, and we bless them. Yachad Shnei Barachos. A motzi v'achidas matzah. One is a motzi and achidas matzah. A motzi keneged the matzah b'shana. This is a big idea there. So you said that the complete one, the one that was never broken, that is the middle line, which is the Perusa, Shehi Lechem Oni, which is the poor man's bread. Let me read it again. So he said, Mavarchim Aleichem Motzi, Vachilas Matzah, also that bracha. Berchus HaMochin Keneged, so the Motzi itself goes to the Matzah Rishona, Shlema, which is complete. Berchus Achilas Matzah Keneged the Matzah Amsois, Aprusa, She Lechem Oni. And that's going to be Adkan. This is 5785. This is Baruch Fleischman. You've been listening to the Tikkun Elevator Kolol in the year 5785, trying to learn the basics. We're out here in the inner space of Kedusha.